It's 1:30 a.m. Eastern Time on election night. Mark Rogers TV with the college football playoff rankings analysis, and it's apropos on this night to liken Donald Trump to, let's say, Michigan, because the election is not yet over, but he's got a clear path, not a easy path, but a clear path, and Hillary Clinton, Oklahoma. How about that? All right, let's get to college football because that's what we talk about here. The college football playoff rankings came out earlier tonight. Alabama at number one, Clemson number two. I had mentioned in the initial rankings that I had no issue with Alabama at one and Clemson at two. Had I made the rankings based on the Louisville, Florida State, Auburn trifecta of wins for Clemson, I would have elevated the Tigers over Alabama. Not that Clemson has played better, but they have defeated a better string of opponents. Okay, now with the LSU victory, I think Alabama's a firm number one because you consider Alabama doesn't have three wins that can compare to Auburn, Louisville, and Florida State, but with LSU, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, USC, they've got a string of more solid wins, much more so than Clemson. All right, Michigan at number three. The schedule has not been daunting. They're at number 60 in college football in schedule rankings. They do have the win over Colorado and, of course, Wisconsin as well. The big win over Penn State that didn't look too impressive in regards to Penn State's status at the time, but the Nittany Lions, of course, on fire. Okay, the first controversy in this one is Washington at 4, Ohio State at 5. The Buckeyes playing maybe more impressively against the tougher schedule to date. Washington, of course, with 0 losses. I'm good with this. So for the first couple of years, especially that first season of 2014, much to debate and really pick apart with these college football rankings week to week. But I think the committee is pretty tight on these rankings now, and they have pretty firm footing on their selections. The reason I like Washington over Ohio State, the 0 loss to the 1 loss. I know that the Ohio State loss at Happy Valley looks better than it did initially, but let's consider what Penn State would be ranked without that win. Much of Penn State's ranking at number 10 currently has to do with defeating Ohio State. Well, Ohio State's loss looks better because Penn State's at number 10. Well, those two things wouldn't be congruent without that taking place. So Ohio State's win looks, or the loss doesn't look so bad, but it puffs up Penn State's ranking at number 10, if you follow me there. But the Buckeyes playing better opponents, and it's going to be right there for either Washington or Ohio State to make it to the college football playoff, regardless of what's been done to date or the college football rankings. Ohio State's got the clear path through Michigan in the Big Ten Championship despite the 1 loss. And for Washington, of course, the issue would be possibly losing 1 game and still winning the Pac-12 championship. Now with Texas A&M on the way, the intriguing team that has possibly taken Texas A&M's place as that team that could ruin the party despite not winning a conference championship is, of course, Louisville. Impressive win over Florida State. Maybe they take care of business or need to, of course, against Houston. They run the table. They win all their games. They win most of them impressively. And on top of that, you got to consider Louisville right now has the most understandable, the most impressive loss, if there is such a thing, the most impressive loss in the country, losing at Clemson on the road, a game in which they had the ball down around the 10-yard line when they weren't able to convert on a 4th down when the wide receiver inexplicably went out of bounds. Louisville was right there. Deshaun Watson had to do his thing in the last 2 minutes to turn a loss to a victory for Clemson. So Louisville's got that understandable loss that trumps any other loss in the country right now in losing at Clemson. Not a ton of quality wins. Of course, the huge Florida State victory looks good. The 2 lost teams that intrigue me, of course, are Auburn and Wisconsin. I talked about it last week. They both have clear paths to get to the college football playoff. Run the table, either one of them, Wisconsin, Auburn. And for Wisconsin, you not only win the West, get to the Big Ten championship, win the Big Ten title, which is arguably the toughest conference in America, probably number 2, and you will have defeated either Michigan or Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game to get there. So you knock them out simultaneously and you place yourself there with an 11-2 record. I think it's very doable for Wisconsin. I'm not talking in these videos about what I'm predicting to have happen, but what I see is the opportunity for each team. So, not expecting Wisconsin to beat Michigan or Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. They lost those games for a reason during the regular season. The Badgers are a very solid team, but not on par with the elite talent at Ohio State in particular or Michigan. Auburn, of course, has that opportunity as well. It's almost a mere opportunity. They've got the game that they need in front of them. So, unlike Texas A&M, which has already lost to Alabama, and I'm a bit surprised that Texas A&M only fell to number 8 in this process after a loss to the worst team in the division, Mississippi State. The thought is, if you look at the rest of the resume, the College Football Playoff Committee definitely looked at the Aggies' resume and didn't knee-jerk react to the loss to Mississippi State. So my initial reaction was they only dropped 4 spots, but if you really look at the Aggies' track record at 7-2, having only lost to Alabama previously on the road by a couple scores, 3 scores, Texas A&M's place where they need to be, but they do not have the opportunity. Auburn does. Auburn runs the table. They get to the SEC championship game, take care of business. They're in Wisconsin's spot as well, a possible 11-2 that won a major conference, the most respected conference in college football. Now, if both of them pull it off, who do you choose there between Wisconsin and Auburn? Could be interesting. Wisconsin would be helped by a more impressive Big Ten championship game victory. Auburn helped by knocking off the number 1 team in the country. So Texas A&M, despite their lofty status, they have been knocked out of it with a second loss and having already played Alabama. Penn State not in great position at number 10 as well. The oft-asked question is who outside the top 10 could possibly make their way in. It's not going to be easy. Oklahoma would need some combination of Washington getting upset in the Pac-12 championship game. Maybe Wisconsin loses a game, but still gets to the Big Ten championship game and pulls off the upset. So a 10-3 Wisconsin team wins the Big Ten, and they're out of it. Auburn maybe getting past Alabama, then turning around and losing the SEC championship game. Oklahoma would need some combination of that scenario. Colorado, interesting team here. I think they have the best chance outside the top 10 teams to make it to the college football playoff. Again, I'm not predicting them to do that, but I think they have the best opportunity because they still play in a well-respected conference in the Pac-12. They, of course, have to run the table, and in doing so, possibly defeat a 12-0 Washington team in the Pac-12 championship. So Colorado would sit there at 11-2 as the Pac-12 champions, having just defeated a number 3 or 4 ranked team in Washington at 12-0. And of course, in the process, having defeated the likes of USC and UCLA, having defeated Utah. Also, the interesting scenario with Colorado, and the committee would have to consider a team that led Michigan in the third quarter before its quarterback was lost in that game. So Colorado led by 3 at Michigan before Leofau was knocked out by the Wolverines. Okay, and then also Virginia Tech. I think this is very difficult, but let's say they run the table. They're 11-2. They have just defeated Clemson in the ACC championship game. That's a possibility. Virginia Tech 11-2 ACC champs, but with 2 not impressive losses, getting just housed by Tennessee in the second half. A Tennessee team that's going to finish 9-3, 8-4. And then also, most notably, losing to Syracuse. I don't think it's going to do Virginia Tech any favors. So that's the way I see it right now. I don't see any big issues with what the committee's got right there, but I see the best opportunity outside the top 10 belonging to Colorado and winning the Pac-12 and defeating Washington in a championship game. I think Washington's placed correctly ahead of Ohio State. I think Louisville has the best opportunity of a non-conference champion to get into the playoff. And then certainly I'm intrigued by the paths that Auburn and Wisconsin have and that opportunity despite having 2 losses each. Need to hear from you now on Mark Rogers TV.